Look, I'm not saying it can't always be effective politics, but that you can have effective politics and good politics and better outcomes with an aspirational politics.
Yeah, aspirational politics is great, but also you should have a clear idea of who is making
There's a
shit
reason
worse.
Hope was on all the merch and none had change.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. None of the people selling merch had change either. It's crazy. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. And I just have to, I'm sorry, good politics has a clear narrative structure. And that narrative structure in a political context is, if your life isn't materially good, why not? And how do we fix that? Right? It's a very simple narrative structure. And it's not so much you need to have enemies, but you need to have a clear explanation. And I do think that that explanation is almost universally a kind of enemy. You know, even if you're like, oh, our number one thing needs to be climate change. Well, okay, how do we fight climate change? Who's in favor of doing the climate change? And it turns out, well, it's wealthy assholes who are trying to make a lot of money at the expense of all of our health. You know, that full stop. It is the capital class. And so even if you try and take like a large scale problem, you have to have an enemy somewhere. And the issue is, and I think that these people, neolibs, understand it, is that problem is often the capital class. It's people in our society who have property, have money, have economic power. They want to keep, maintain, and grow that power. And if you just don't acknowledge that you even need enemies in the first place, I guess that's a very convenient way of ignoring those power structures.
With a politics that isn't just about what it's opposed to, but about what it can build and about who we can be. Because I think everyone has sort of this own internal struggle between their own better selves and their better angels and their base instincts.
Much earlier in the conversation, I'd asked you about liberalism, which was a little bit of a weird question to drop in there. And I don't really have a question here. It's just something I'm thinking about. But you actually strike me as one of the most liberal as a temperament. Liberal in the classical sense. Politicians I've talked to in a long time.
What do you mean by liberal in the classical sense, Ezra? I would be so angry at anyone who would even dare to suggest that to me. Like that a classical liberal isn't that what Dave Rubin calls himself? Like Dave Rubin, Tim Pool calls himself a classical liberal.
And I've been...
Punky Gal, please stop using that term. I understand why you're using it. I don't like seeing it in my chat.
Starting to read a lot of older books about liberalism because it feels to me that if it is a thing, an approach to politics that even liberals lost.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think we lost it, I very much count myself as a liberal, was a feeling that liberalism's virtue was its vice. That its openness to critique, its constant balancing.
Yes, this is the abundance guy, getting shittier by the day.
Are you ethnically liberal or culturally liberal?
Excuse me, I'm culturally political. I'm neither liberal nor conservative. I'm simply a culturally political individual.
Its movement towards incremental solutions and its skepticism of total solutions, that those had been these conditions under which problems never truly got solved.
Also, can we just acknowledge that a recurring through line of Ezra Klein's critique here seems to be that the people farther left of me, they want a one bill solution. They want one bill that fixes everything all at once, but you can't possibly have that. So we should just take small incremental steps. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Can't you just have the one big thing? And as more problems crop up, we can deal with those problems as they come. I don't think we need to have a gradual change if we can articulate the change we need right now. You know, there may be unforeseen consequences, but we can deal with those as they come. Doesn't seem that difficult to me. I'm ethnically political on my mom's side.
Systemic racism and bigotry festered. And I think as it began to absorb that critique, it lost a lot of confidence in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it had Barack Obama, who was the apex of the liberal leaders, and he hadn't brought about utopia.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seemed exhausted. And I think alongside that, there's some way in which I cannot, I still need to figure this out, but I'll say it because I believe it's true. I think there's something about the social media platforms. It is
Here's Emma talk. You know what? Well, yeah, we'll do
that
it.
perspective. Again,
Thanks for getting
not
so
that I wanna-
fucking granular with us.
I like when Emma comes out to fight. You know, it always takes me aback a little bit. But I like it. It's really good. You know? Sometimes she also she made like a really edgy joke the other day as I was listening, and I was just like, oh my god, she went there. I think it was a joke about what's his name? He's British. He has like the curly hair. My mind wants to say Ezra Klein, but I know it's not that. He's in movies. He converted to Catholicism. Russell Brand, Beasadoo, thank you. Yeah, she made a really spicy joke about Russell Brand's allegations, and I was just like, oh my god, she went for it.
illiberal as a medium. I think the reason that we now have X and we have Blue Sky and we have Threads, and none of them are good.
Yeah.
They all...
I don't know, Blue Sky's pretty all right. You know, I don't get attacked by like transphobic white nationalists when I'm on Blue Sky, so I think that's a pretty big improvement, actually.
lead to bad habits of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because simplifying your thoughts down to these little bumper stickers, then having other people who agree with you retweet them or mob you is just, it doesn't lend itself to the pluralistic balancing modes of thought.
Oh my god! Did you guys hear what this wanker just like spewed from his mouth? Are you kidding me? Holy shit! Yeah. All right. Here. This is so fucking funny.
I think the reason that we now have X and we have Blue Sky and we have Threads, and none of them are good.
Yeah.
They all lead to bad habits of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because simplifying your thoughts down to these little bumper stickers, then having other people who agree with you retweet them or mob you is just, it doesn't lend itself to the pluralistic balancing modes of thought that liberalism is built to prize.
People are being too mean to me for my bumper sticker thoughts that I shared on the social media website, and it's not allowing my pluralistic modes of mind to assemble themselves appropriately. Jesus Christ. What wankery.
They're illiberal enough.
Yeah, this is truly some Dave Rubin high-level ideas.
In a fundamental way.
Genuinely, like, I'm sorry if your tweeting is impacting you this much that you have to build your entire ideology around how people keep ratioing you on Blue Sky. Like, you shouldn't be doing politics content, man. You know, you should be able to like put down the phone for a little bit. Like, it sucks when that shit goes viral, but you know, you can just like turn off notifications for the app and then, I don't know, like go for a walk, pet a dog, make those oatmeal cookies you've been putting off. Dissect that statement. Did any of that mean something? All right.
For stickers, bad habits of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because simplifying.
Okay. So we have all these social media websites and they all lead to bad habits of mind.
Your thoughts down to these little bumper stickers, then having other people who agree with you retweet.
So they lead to bad mental habits because you are just sharing like a short phrase, short set of text, paragraph of text at most.
Them or mob you.
And then people will either amplify that or attack you.
Is just, it doesn't lend itself to the pluralistic balancing modes of thought.
People either agreeing with you and amplifying your take or mobbing you and being mean to you doesn't lend itself to good mental habits, i.e. pluralistic balancing modes of thought.
That liberalism is built to prize.
Okay, so we just back up real quick. The pluralistic balancing modes of thought, I think, is just his way of saying like the marketplace of ideas. Like if you are just relying on this system, it doesn't lead to like a balanced conversation and that is necessary for liberalism to occur. Because remember, at the very beginning of this show, they defined liberalism as just being able to have a discussion in the marketplace of ideas. So he's literally just saying they're bad avenues for having an in-depth conversation. And I just want to say that anyone who phrases it even remotely like he did is an absolute wanker.
It's the magical Leoplerodon Charlie.
Charlie. It's a magical Leoplerodon Charlie. Yes, blue sky bad is essentially what he said.
Price. They're illiberal in a fundamental way.
Where does Saki Tanuki get all this money? George Soros. Obviously, my handler.
And so I don't think it's
But also, if other people want to step up and alleviate some of the pressure for Saki Tanuki, aka George Soros, that'd be much appreciated. George's coffers only run so deep. Also, thank you for supporting the show, Saki Tanuki. And Paladin, you guys have practically single-handedly funded today's stream. So thank you very, very much.
An accident. That is, liberalism began to lose its own moorings. Illiberalism roared back. And just one experience.
I love that Ezra Klein's analysis of liberalism versus illiberalism is that people started having worse conversations, and that's what brought illiberalism back, not the concerted effort of capital over the last century to weaken the regulations on their abilities.
Here, your other handlers.
Kenoth Karn, thank you very much for the 5 tier 1 subs. I very, very much appreciate the other handlers. Thank you very, very much for supporting stream.
I've had this whole period with Donald Trump, the second term, is realizing that the thing that we were trying to keep locked in the basement was really dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, understand exactly, depraved ambiance. Understand that that's exactly what he's going for. He's trying to create an us versus them mentality where, if you agree with him, then you're a liberal. But if you disagree with him, then you are illiberal. You are actually anti-democratic, anti-liberal. It is, again, a symptom of this democratic schism between the abundance people and the do something Dems. And it's interesting to see this fight deepen and the battle lines get drawn, Spitfire, thank you for the $10 Australian.
Alex Soros here. Dad said to donate some to take the heat off him. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. No adrenochrome for me tonight.
Spitfire, thank you very, very much. I appreciate the support.
Really, really profoundly dangerous. Even compared to his first term,
Did they go over how enemies-based politics was bad a little bit ago? Snuggle Kitten, thank you for reminding me of that, because I had totally forgotten that literally just 10 minutes ago in this show, they were attacking the very notion of having a politics based on enemies. And now he's contrasting liberalism and the illiberalism that disagrees with it.
The attacks on due process, the trying to break institutions, that if you let that out, if you let the disappearance machine get started, that things can go really badly. And there's something about liberalism that is so...
I just find it very weird that Ezra Klein is talking about how, it's illiberal to disagree with him, and then he makes the comparison to the disappearance machine. That's... I don't know. It's very, very weird.
So unsatisfying. The work you just described having to do, it sounds so unsatisfying and frustrating. And yet, something, I guess just that, and yet.
And yet it is the approach and the system that, while imperfect, is the most likely and most proven to actually lead to the progress that I know so many others seek. Look,
proven by whom? I need some citations.
Look, people have one life, and it is completely understandable that a person would feel, I have one life, and when you ask me to wait, you are asking me to watch my one life pass by without the respect and fairness that I deserve, and that is too much to ask of anyone, and that is. It is our job to demand now in the face of people who say never, but it's also our job to then not reject the possibility for a better tomorrow. As
I need to.
Wait, you are asking me to watch my one life pass by without the respect and fairness that I deserve. And that is too much to ask of anyone. And that is. It is our job.
Okay, so it's too much to ask of anyone for them to wait their entire lives to receive the rights and respect that they've been due. Okay, I agree with that.
Job to demand now.
Yeah, I agree. It is the job of politicians to demand that respect and equality now. Okay. Agreed.
In the face of people who say never.
Cool. Yeah, you tell those people to fuck off, get out of your way. You're going to get rights for your constituents. Okay, I'm with you. I agree with you so far.
But it's also our job to then not reject the possibility for a better tomorrow.
Yeah. So what's confusing me there is that you are saying but, because my understanding is that if you are fighting for the rights of your constituents, you are fighting for that better tomorrow. So what better tomorrow? Is it this a better tomorrow where your constituents don't have the rights and respect? What are you talking about?
As that compromise. I truly believe that liberalism, that our ability to have conversations across disagreement, that our ability to recognize that in a pluralistic, diverse democracy, there will be inevitably people and positions that hurt us. But when you're siloed and when you suppress that opposition underground in that basement, to use your word, they're alone in there. And not only does that sense of sort of community loneliness breed bitterness, but it also breeds radicalization. Liberalism is not only the best mechanism to move forward, but it is also the best mechanism to rein in the worst excesses of your opposition. Yes,
the definition of liberalism you guys gave at the beginning is just having a conversation, and having conversations is how we move politically. You seem to be talking about something else now when you're talking about liberalism.
Compromises, you don't get to do everything you want to do, but that is a much better bet than the alternative, which is what we have developed now, which is an illiberal democracy in so many ways in our body politic.
I just can't believe that somehow the illiberal democracy that they're talking about in the body politic has been apparently created by trans girls memeing on Blue Sky and Twitter, and that's where the illiberalism comes from, and not the conservative oligarchs who funnels billions of dollars into Donald Trump's campaign and coffers. It's not the billionaires with the amount of money that could raise an army of 1 billion soldiers. No, it's the shit posting trans girls that are rendering our society illiberal.
One where, yes, we might have temporary victories, but as we are seeing right now, those victories can be fleeting and the consequences can be deadly.
Was this always your political temperament, or was it forged?
Mithril, you are correct. This does feel like a politics of despair. I find this supremely unmotivating.
I have grown and changed. I think, there are things that I did and said 5, 10, 15 years ago that I look back and regret, because I think that they were too illiberal. Because I think I bought into a culture online that didn't always bring out the best in me. But I do think that those were exceptions. And even when I was an advocate, I was always perceived as one of the more mainstream respectability advocates. I was always considered someone who was too willing to work across disagreement and engage in conversations that we shouldn't be having.
I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I've seen people on the internet engage with truly, far-right activists, okay? And I do not believe that, I don't believe that Sarah McBride actually has the gumption to engage with far-right people and actually push back on their ideas.
I was always considered someone who was too willing to work within the system. I think I've fundamentally always had this same perspective, and fundamentally have always believed that we cannot eliminate grace from our politics and our change making. And that's rooted in watching my parents grow and change after I came out. Look, I went into that experience knowing my parents were they are progressive people. They embraced my older brother who's gay without skipping a beat. But I knew when I shared that I was trans with them, it was going to be devastating, to use a word that my mother uses. And I knew that if I responded by shutting down the conversation, by refusing to walk with them, by refusing to give them grace and assume good intentions when they would inevitably say and do things that might be hurtful to me, I would stunt their capacity to take that walk with me.
I'm like, as somebody who has come out to my parents and had it go poorly with one and not great, but still okay with the other, and has worked through a lot of this in therapy, there is no right way to come out and respond to, you know, the responses of your parents. There is no right way to do that. And I spent years in therapy trying to figure out how exactly I could say the exact right thing and react in the exact right way to facilitate my dad being able to accept me. And he couldn't, you know? And I find it, I mean, disappointing isn't quite the right word, but odd, maybe, that I feel like Sarah McBride here is universalizing her experience of coming out to her parents. And in a way, it feels like an indictment on me that I should have figured out the perfect way to present this to my dad, to have him accept it. But I don't think there was one. I don't think there was. And I think that fundamentally, Sarah McBride is making a pretty big rhetorical mistake, which is that, yes, you can always react in better, more constructive ways, for sure. That's a possibility when you encounter unfamiliar situations. There are, you know, always ways you might be able to handle it better, right? But also, you know, having to take on all of that responsibility yourself, well, I don't think that's right either, you know? I don't know. There's something about this that strikes me particularly wrong. It's difficult for me to articulate. I'm sure I'll be able to figure out how to talk about it in like a day or two.
And I saw us as a family move forward with a degree of grace toward each other, that we were all going to inevitably say and do things that we would come to regret, that might hurt a little bit, but that if we assumed good intentions and walk forward, that my parents would go from saying, what are the chances that I have a gay son and a trans child, from a place of pity to a place of awe in the diversity of our family and the blessings that have come with that diversity. And that only came from grace. And then I saw it working in Delaware, passing non-discrimination protections. I've seen it time and time again. And so I have borne witness to change that once seemed so impossible to me as a kid that it was almost incomprehensible, not only become possible, but become a reality, in large part because of grace in our politics. And yes, because I was willing to extend that grace to others.
Grace, bless.
I just also want to maybe point out that part of our struggle as trans people should be to building a better world where trans people are accepted, so that instead of having to police your reaction to one of the hardest things you've ever had to do in your life, coming out as trans to your parents, maybe instead of you as a child having to figure out how to do that, or you as, you know, the child of your parents, if you're not literally a child, that maybe we should work to build up enough acceptance in society for trans people that parents aren't going to like go into a full existential meltdown at the fact that their kid is trans. Maybe what is necessary here isn't grace, but actually a fight to normalize transgender people, a fight to make it the norm, make it the understood like baseline of society that trans people exist and should be accepted and aren't, you know, these aberrations that must be destroyed. Maybe that's what our fight should be. Not just so that in our moment, trans people are protected, but so that future generations, when, you know, our kids have kids and their kids have kids, that those kids grow up in families where it's okay if they wind up figuring out at some point that they're trans, that they can go to their parents and it's not even like a thing that they have to wonder. that no kid has to wonder, will my mom still love me if I tell her that I'm trans? Maybe that's what the fight should be for. And maybe that's something that's worth actually fighting for instead of rolling up into the goddamn fetal position until like the predators go away.
Things witness are these for you religious concepts?
They tap into my religion. I'm Presbyterian. I'm an ordained elder in the Presbyterian Church. But I think they go to something for me that transcends religion and my faith, and tap into just my sense of beauty toward the world and my sense of beauty at life, and the joy that I get to live this life, that I get to be myself, and that I get to live a life of purpose. And I know I'm lucky in that respect, and I want everyone to have that same opportunity. And I have seen that approach and that grace. It's allowed me to be a better version of myself, a happier version of myself, which I think has actually unlocked those opportunities.
Yeah, I think that there is a level here of just, I don't know if it's like a feeling that she's been chosen by God to set an example for trans people, but I have no words, guys. We need people who are willing to fight for us, even when it's hard for them.
Is it too much to ask for a non-cocked atheist trans woman in Congress?
I'm not entirely sure how we determine the cocked status of one. I think you meant to write cooked, a non-cooked. But thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. Or maybe cucked. I just think that like ultimately meant to write cucked. There we go. We need people baseline who are willing to fight against our current moment. You know, we need people who are willing to stand up and say, hey, why are you doing that? Cut it out. We need people who are willing to, at the very least, like say, like, hey, stop it. Like I'm not even asking for like a trans woman in Congress who's like ready to scrap. I'm just asking for one who's willing to say, stop that, please. Like that would be like 10 times more spine than what Sarah McBride has shown.
Is it a practice? Like when you say that it's allowed you to be a better version of yourself, it's a podcast where everything is ultimately self-help. Is that something that intentionally you cultivate? And if so, how?
Yes, I think it's often an intentional choice. So many of the problems that we face are rooted in the fact that hurt people hurt people. And I think we are in this, not to go down a rabbit hole.
I would argue that maybe on the list of things that cause problems, yeah, that's up there. Maybe it's number 9 on the list, but I think number 1 might be capital. It might be the capital interests. I think it might be that people with money have paid money to make the narrative what it is in the popular zeitgeist. I don't think it's that hurt people are hurting people. I don't think that's the primary driver of the current anti-trans panic. Oh God, who in chat? Travenoid, real live, laugh, love energy. Yeah, this is the most demonic incarnation of live, laugh, love energy.
I think that we are in this place where we are in this fierce competition for pain, where the left says to the right, what do you know about pain? White, straight, cis man, my pain is real as a queer transgender person. And then the right says to the left, what do you know about pain, college-educated, cosmopolitan elite? My pain is real in a post-industrial community ravaged by the opioid crisis. And we are in this competition for pain when there is plenty of pain to go around. And every therapist will tell you that the first step to healing is to have your pain seen and validated. And while it requires intentionality and effort sometimes, I think we would all be better off if we recognized we don't have to believe that someone is right for what they're facing to be wrong. But I also think that there's one other aspect of this that I think we have lost, which is the intentionality of hope.
These are all platitudes. It's nonstop platitudes, man. This is nuts. Look, she has to really talk about the intentionality of hope because she knows that if you've watched through this entire episode, it's been stripped from you.
And I think we have fallen prey in our online discourse, in our politics, to a sense that cynicism is in vogue, that cynicism shows that we get it. And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is sometimes hope is a conscious effort, and that that sense of inevitability, that sort of organic sense of hope that we felt in this post-1960s world, that is the exception in our history.
What are
In
you
order to
talking
validate
about?
pain, you must realize that pain is good, and realize you must go to the bone pain. You must bone pan, and then enjoy the bread of life.
I feel pretty boned right now. Socket Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. I appreciate it. I'm hoping this ends. Me too. What if it just goes on forever?
And you have to step into the shoes of people in the 1950s, people in the 1930s, people in the 1850s, and to move past the history that we view with the hindsight of inevitability and go into those moments and recognize that every previous generation of Americans had every reason to give up hope. And you cannot tell me that the reasons for hopelessness now are greater than the reasons for hopelessness then.
So you're saying there's something
I love how uninspiring this is.
audacious about hope.
There's something
Some
audacious.
audacity in it.
You have to summon it. You have to summon it. And I think if we allow ourselves to recognize that hope isn't about optimism, is about circumstance. It's about evaluating likelihood. Hope is something that transcends that. And when we lull ourselves into this sense of cynicism and we give up on hope, that is when we lose.
My editor,
That would not motivate. I'm trying to think of a time in history when there'd be a less motivating speech. Like maybe if you're a commander on a medieval battlefield and you turn to your, the shattered remnants of the, regiment you've been commanding, and you see them all scared, shitting themselves with dysentery, and you go, "All right, boys, we're fucked," and then you just like fall on your own sword. Like I don't know, maybe that would be like the equivalent of how inspired I am right now.
has this habit of these very Delphic sayings that I have to then think about for a while afterwards. And a week ago, he said to me that cynicism is always stupidity.
Mm.
And in the conversation we were having, I didn't ask him about it. But I think, and he's not here to tell me I'm wrong, that what he meant is that it always includes cynicism is the posture that we both know what is happening and we know what is going to happen. That we've seen through the performance into the real grimy, pathetic backstage. And we know it's rigged.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's plotted and planned. And so it's this posture, this knowing posture of idiocy.
I think it's also, it's that, and it's easy. It's easy.
I think that's the place to end. Always our final question.
Yeah, it's definitely, definitely, I'm the cynic here. Just someone with the belief that workers should be in control of the means of production, aka if you work in that factory, you should have a say in how that factory is run. It's me being a cynic here. It's not disagreement with their politics. It's simply you're cynical. You're a cynical individual, and therefore you shouldn't be listened to because you've rejected hope. You've rejected the path of hope and embraced the path of the cynic. Well, that was depressing. Yeah, our mainstream Democrats might be cooked, guys. When I talk about how you guys need to get involved in like DSA and in the Democratic Party,
Ezra is in fact
this is why.
the perfect rot that has enabled fascism.
Fascism. Ezra is like a very useful neo-lib for conservatives. I think there's a reason he's done so well at the New York Times. Let me put it that way. This is the politics of go back to sleep. We'll be doing our jobs. Don't you worry. You don't have to look at what we're doing. We'll do our jobs. Just go back to sleep. Don't care about things. Don't go out and protest and get involved in the political process. that would be inconvenient for our plans. Like, there's a very real sense in which the world is held together by, friendship, by our common bonds with one another. But then there is like the naive idea that like, oh, because the world is held together by like friendship and social bonds, like everyone can just like interact with everyone and it's going to be fine. Like we're no problems whatsoever. We're all friends here, but like that's also not the case. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
Riverboat Deck is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.